welcome to the Smorgasboard podcast. We're not doing a traditional episode right now. We're going to do a Wandavision episode 3 review, give our thoughts on it. So we're going to jump right in, but I'm going to give a big spoiler warning. If you have not seen the episode, pause it right now, go watch it, because we are going to talk about all the spoilers in it and don't want to ruin anything for you. So after you watch the episode, come back and join us, get our thoughts. So, all right, we're going to jump right back in. So, quick summary here. Episode starts out, looks like we're in the late 60s, early 70s now. Sitcoms. You get a very Partridge Family feeling from the song and intro. And turns out we're picking right back up where the last episode left off with Wanda being pregnant. And her pregnancy is still advancing very quickly. And we get to see the doctor visit and checking up on her, seeing how she's doing. So, guys, you want to give any initial thoughts of the episode here?
Yeah, so it's interesting that it immediately picks up with the fact that like they're self-aware with how quick her pregnancy is like progressing. Because at the end of the last episode, suddenly Wanda's just pregnant, and then into this episode, they're like meeting with the doctor, and he's basically saying that she's like 4 months along. And the fact that Vision and Wanda are like aware that like this is weird, because I kind of thought it would take just like I didn't think that they would be that aware of the pregnancy. I thought that it would just kind of be like stick to the sitcom tropes, not really like acknowledge it all that much, because up to this point we've kind of been under the assumption that like this is a world that Wanda's creating, so why would she create a a very blatant like loophole that would cause people to question whether they're actually in reality or not. So it's interesting that her and Vision are both very concerned that she's suddenly 4 months pregnant after like a 12-hour time span.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that just shows that none of this is actually happening. That, like, that Wanda's creating it all. So the fact that nobody else is aware that she has proceeded to become not pregnant to pregnant within like a day and a half's time, it just points to Wanda's creating it all of herself. That nobody else in that is either real or that they are working along with somebody else.
Then we get Vision. He's reading up on all of his books and practicing changing diapers and everything for the baby who's coming. And you get a little bit of the doctor is leaving, thinking it's going to be 9 months, 8 months, longer, or it's less than that. He said she was about 4 months along, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So within a day, she's day and a half. I think Vision said overnight, so it's very quickly. She's 4 months already. Doctor thinks he's got another 4 or 5 months, and he's gonna go on vacation to Bermuda.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would have been great if he would have said Tahiti.
Oh,
yes.
Because that was the whole like Phil Coulson thing from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That would have been a funny callback, but it's fine. But it's very clearly everything's falling into like the sitcom tropes still. Like the idea that like the doctor's gonna be gone, and like you can tell that like Wanda's gonna give birth before the episode's over. It's not gonna be like a few months or a few days even, because I think there's a point where Vision says like he's calculating in his head how long it's actually gonna take for the baby to come, and he says something like, "Oh, it's gonna be like 3 days," but like Wanda's progressing so quickly, there's no way that when he said 3 days, I was like, there's no way. She went from like not pregnant to 4 months pregnant in 12 hours, and you think she's gonna finish out like the rest of the pregnancy in 3 days? Like I saw it coming. He's a super genius, and I'm a dummy with a podcast. Like
well, if we go deeper into this being Wanda's mind, she wouldn't have known how long. And if she's thinking of like trying to think of replicating Vision's powers, she obviously couldn't.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah, if she's trying to like
So like
She's trying to anticipate how Vision would actually calculate it, but maybe she's just really bad at math. And
she's like, I don't do math, guys. Like I just I just warp reality. Like
I mess with people's mind and throw red magic at people. I don't do calculus.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's really funny, and the whole idea that the doctor is not going to be there for the pregnancy, that's like massive sitcom kind of tropes, because like, oh, the baby's coming, but we can't get the doctor. What are we going to do? Ah! You know, that's all very, very indicative of, you know, sitcom pregnancies, and most sitcom pregnancies at least go a couple episodes, but this one went like 10 minutes, I think.
Then we get a glimpse of their baby room that they're preparing for the baby, and some discussion of baby names. Wanda wants the name, what was it?
Tommy. Yeah.
Tommy. And Vision prefers the name Billy. So they kind of go back and forth about, oh, let's hope for a girl then, so we don't have to decide between the two and
Yeah.
everything. And we get to see the baby room and see a stork painting on the wall and everything that Wanda's, you know, using her powers and painting on the wall and everything. Then she starts to go into some false labor, and Vision gets her to use her breathing techniques, like Lamaze class style or something, you know, breathing techniques and everything. So any thoughts there, guys? Anything you picked up on?
Yeah, so her kind of go along with the contractions. Like every time she has a contraction, like her powers start kind of going haywire. So in the baby room, they're setting up like a mobile that's a bunch of butterflies, and she has like a quick contraction or like a tightening, and then suddenly all the butterflies become real and like flutter out the window. And then there's just a bunch of other like little quirky things on the wall spinning. Starts, you know, I think it's later that when her like water breaks, it's actually like the pipes in the house bursting.
Yes.
There's a lot of like, you know, very silly kind of like symbolism with, you know, like, oh, my water broke, and like all the water in the house, and like the lights turn out and all kinds of crazy stuff. So every time she starts having a contraction, her magic's just going haywire, which is very interesting to me and something I want to bring up later once we get to the end of the episode, because I think it kind of like ties in to maybe what's happening in the grander scheme of things. So I have a pretty big like theory, and I'm excited to talk about it, but I'll hold off until we get to the end of the episode.
Okay. Something with the butterflies, creating the butterflies, I took that as a little bit of symbolism of Wanda being able to bring life into this world.
Oh yeah.
Aww.
In her reality, you know.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So because this show definitely has a lot of things, you know, symbolism.
Maybe it's like butterflies in the stomach, you know, like they're nervous about being parents.
Yeah.
Could be. Because Vision's reading like 1,000 books trying to figure out how to be a good dad, and like super speed changing diapers. You know, he's trying to be a good dad, and you know, it's adorable.
Love it. So then let's see. She goes into false labor. We mentioned that, and then like you said, her water breaks. So then Vision's like, oh my gosh, it's happening. It's about to happen. So he runs off to get the doctor. And lo and behold, about that time, knock knock at the door, it's our friendly neighbor Geraldine comes over and kind of starts making herself at home. Goes in, ask what was it she was asking for?
A bucket because
a bucket.
Bucket because all of the pipes in her house was leaking. But if we fast forward a little bit, the neighbors were talking amongst themselves saying that she doesn't have a home.
Yes. That's right. And when Vision was outside earlier in the episode, he was talking with can't remember his name.
It was later in the episode, yeah.
Herb, that's what it was.
So
Herb
so we might have skipped over kind of an important part. So like we'll dial back a little bit. There's this part when the doctor's leaving the house after the initial exam, and Vision's talking to the doctor when he tells him about like, oh, I'm going to be going to Bermuda or whatever. Vision looks over and sees his neighbor Herb, and they're like, exchanging pleasantries or whatever. And Herb starts kind of acting funny because he's like trimming the hedges, but then he starts trimming into their like concrete divider fence. And Vision says something jokingly like, "Oh, taking hedge trimming a little bit too far there." And Herb's just like, "Haha, yeah." And he just keeps going deeper into the fence. Just like it's not even phasing him. So like Vision starts kind of getting that initial like impact that something's weird. And I think sometime before Wanda's water actually breaks, her and Vision are talking about how like it's odd that all this is happening so fast, and Vision kind of starts putting two and two together that something really strange is happening, because we've seen from the last two episodes that there is definitely something going on in the town of Westview where they're currently living. There's the weird radio signal and the guy in the beekeeper costume from the last episode. So Vision's kind of starting to like make the connection that there's something odd going on. And when he actually brings it up to Wanda, similarly to the end of last week's episode, there's like a jump cut where it almost looks like if this was on like a VHS tape or something, they like cut the reel and like patched in a new scene where instead of Vision's showing concern about how strange everything's happening, he's just suddenly like, that's life. It's an adventure and we're on it together. And it goes from being a really concerning moment to a really sweet moment. But in the same way that last week's episode, Wanda kind of like rewound time when she saw what appeared to be a sword agent coming up out of the sewers. She kind of rewrote history to be what she wants it to be, this happy sitcom carefree kind of life, kind of neglecting how real world impacts and all of that good stuff. So it's very interesting that they're starting to like teeter in more to like this illusion that Wanda's created, or that we're assuming Wanda's created, is starting to like break down more.
I took that as more confirmation that this is Wanda controlling most of it.
Yeah.
Because she didn't like what Vision was saying, and then instantly it was just like, nope, we're taking that back a few seconds. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
So.
I also think it is interesting that if she has created this world, that Vision would say that.
Yeah.
So I think,
True.
even though I think this is the world that she has control over, she's not alone in this world. Somebody else, like of course, the sword, like, is either keeping really close tabs or trying to infiltrate and bring her out. Because in episode 2, we hear someone say, "Wanda, who's doing this to you?" And then we see the beekeeper as if he's trying to come into her world. Then of course she doesn't like that, so she goes back. And then maybe they try to get Vision, to try and think of the word, to, I guess, oh my god, words. to confirm
Yeah.
that what Wanda is seeing is real concerns. And then she's like, "Oh, no, we don't want to see that." So I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more time skips of people trying to bring Wanda back into reality and her not wanting to. So I think that somebody's trying to bring her back out.
Do you guys think we're going to find out that Herb and Agnes are also sword agents? Or do you think they're also just projections of Wanda's world?
Go ahead, Julia.
I'm kind of torn, because I feel like if they were sword agents, they wouldn't be talking about it willy-nilly in front of Vision. Well, I mean, Vision's also part of it. I don't know. Like, they were very weird about, like, "Oh, we're just," and then, like, what's her face? The girl from Parks and Rec.
Agnes?
Yeah. Agnes like, shh, we can't say that. So,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
they know. So it makes me feel like that they're at least somebody from the outside.
See, I'm not so sure about Herb because the way he was like cutting into the wall, I took that as like a malfunction or something in his programming. Whether it's Sword put him in there, not as like a person, but like as a robot or a projection of some sort, and his programming was malfunctioning. That's the way I took that. But
Yeah.
I could see Agnes maybe being a Sword agent because she was in the previous episodes we saw her trying to get close to Wanda.
Yeah.
Not as much Vision, but Wanda. So I could see her being, especially with her being the one getting on her, like, hey, you can't do that,
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I kind of where I'm landing on it right now is I don't think that they're a part of Sword because what to kind of progress this conversation kind of goes a little bit deeper into what happens later in the episode. So I'll just kind of step through a little bit more. So Agnes, no, Geraldine comes over. She's asking for a bucket because like all the like water that's spilling down in everybody's houses from Wanda's pregnancy, like messing with the entire town. And there's a lot of kind of like Wanda holding things in front of her to try and like prevent anybody from knowing that she's pregnant. And as that like starts progressing more and more and more, Wanda eventually goes into labor and starts having the baby. So Vision's running off to try and get the doctor as quickly as he can. Geraldine's helping her deliver the baby, and finally Vision picks up the doctor, takes off super speed back to the house. Wanda ends up having the baby, and Geraldine helps her deliver it. And then Vision shows up with the doctor. They have this nice little moment where Vision's like, yes, we can name the baby Tommy because that's what you wanted. And it's all nice and sweet. And then it turns out Wanda has a second baby coming. So there's twins. So Vision helps deliver this one. They have two healthy baby boys, Tommy and Billy. And then as Wanda and Geraldine are kind of like, fawning over the babies, Vision steps outside with the doctor, and the doctor kind of adds more to like the idea that something's not right because he says something about like it's hard to leave a small town or it's impossible to like leave a small town, and he says it like in a very ominous fashion. And then that's kind of when we see Agnes and Herb over by the fence talking, like we were mentioning earlier, how like they're also kind of acting strange, and that kind of leads into Vision starts probing them for information, like, hey, what's going on? And Agnes brings up, well, is Geraldine in the house with Wanda? And he says yes. And then it's funny that Agnes starts mentioning it's strange that she's new to the town, she doesn't have a family, and she doesn't even have a house. So right there, Agnes is kind of being like, she doesn't belong here for whatever reason. She's not like one of us. So it's weird to think that Agnes and Herb are Sword agents if they're pointing out the oddity of Geraldine being in the town. So I don't think they're Sword agents. I don't know if they're like constructs of Wanda's mind that are trying to protect Wanda, because Herb was about to say something to Vision, like she's not one of us because we're, and then Agnes like cuts him off and won't let him tell Vision anything else. So it's hard to tell whether they're both just constructs of Wanda's mind trying to like protect the illusion, or if maybe they're real people like Geraldine, but for whatever reason their like end goal is to keep this illusion going and keep this like fantasy alive for one reason or another. And it's at this point it's hard to tell. It's just all speculation because Agnes was so forward about like exposing Geraldine, but Herb wanted to tell Vision the truth about like what they really are, but Agnes like cut him off. So there's kind of a weird dynamic going on between the two of them. It kind of feels like they're working together to some degree, but there might be some kind of clash of interest, like whether Vision should be brought into the fold about like what's actually going on in Westview, or if he should just be kept in the dark, and just continue living this like happy sitcom life,
Yeah, and then like I just want to point out for those who didn't catch it that we do know that Geraldine is either working closely with with or working for Sword because of her necklace.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
right. That's how
Okay.
Wanda originally confirmed it.
Yeah, well, like,
Looking at that. Right.
I just wanted to say that so, like, no one's like, well, like, what, like, what if Geraldine's actually part of the simulation and then those two are Sword? We know that Geraldine's working somewhat with Sword. We don't know in what way, what capacity, because of her necklace.
Yeah, because as we jump back into the house while Vision is having this conversation with Herb and Agnes, we go back inside the house, and Wanda's kind of telling Geraldine, like, I was a twin too, and she starts telling her about Pietro, and Geraldine kind of has this moment where it's interesting that she kind of breaks character in a way, because she mentions like, oh well, your brother, he was killed by Ultron, right? Harkening back to the second Avengers movie. So then suddenly it's like the wall's completely broken down, and Wanda just like immediately turns on Geraldine, and she's like, well, wait, what did you say? And Geraldine tries to walk back what she said, like, oh, I didn't say anything. But then, as Julia mentioned, that's when Wanda notices like the sword necklace that she's wearing, and it's the same emblem that she saw on the back of the Beehive Keeper. And I wonder if, and then it's the same symbol that was on the helicopter, the little helicopter toy that she found in her hedges in the last episode. So she's seen this image before, and it makes me wonder if she's seen it prior to the helicopter, like the first time. It makes me wonder if in the outside world she knows what sword is, and that's a cause for concern. So as so she sees the sword emblem on Geraldine's necklace, and she's just like, you got to go. And then we cut back to Vision coming inside, and Geraldine's just like gone. There's like no trace of her, and there's this very ominous shot because all the feel good sitcom things are gone. Like we go very quickly from like this happy, fun loving comedy sitcom to being like right into like drama like immediately, because Geraldine's gone, nowhere to be seen. Vision's like completely in the dark to what's going on, and he asks Wanda, where's Geraldine? And Wanda just says, oh, she had to leave. And she says it very like scary and ominously, and then suddenly it's funny because the I don't know what the correct term is for like the way the camera is shot, but it's like you have the black bars on the side.
Aspect ratio.
Yeah, the aspect ratio starts to change into like the more cinematic like aspect ratio, and then we see the town of Westview, like the real town of Westview, being surrounded by some kind of like force field or something. And then suddenly Geraldine gets tossed through it, and she's in the real world. Yeah, she didn't just leave; she got kicked out. She's getting chucked through this force field, and she comes out in the real world. And then it turns out the town of Westview is just surrounded by all of these like sword agents, because there's like helicopters flying around, trucks pulling up, soldiers coming out, flashlights on Geraldine. And then the episode kind of ends there with this huge revelation that not only is Westview real, but it seems to be the whole town is under some kind of control. Because, we were talking about like, well, where does this world actually exist? Is it in Wanda's head? Is it like a multiverse kind of thing? Well, now it seems like not only is it a real town, but it's a real town that's being manipulated somehow. And the obvious answer is that it's Wanda that's like manipulating the town. And then the question becomes, why is she manipulating the town?
Yeah. I was a little surprised that Westview was a real place. I thought this was like 100% in her mind, but that's definitely not the case anymore.
Right.
It is a physical place, it seems to be, with Wanda doing her thing. So I like that. So it makes me wonder. Okay, I'm thinking like from Sword's perspective. If you send agents in there, why in the world would you put anything that resembled a sword on those people going into this place?
Right.
So is that just Sword, or is that like Wanda's? Well, no, when what's her name, when Geraldine got kicked out, she was wearing the same clothes and everything. So it
Yeah.
does seem like she wore her wardrobe and everything going in.
Yeah, it's
So
very
I thought
odd.
maybe that was like a subliminal Wanda thing, like this person's not right, so my mind's gonna put something on them that's not gonna fit in or
Yeah.
something. But that I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's very odd to incorporate your actual, because if you're a super spy and you're trying to, it's like the James Bond fallacy, like you're a super spy and your whole goal is to infiltrate, but you introduce yourself as James Bond. You know,
Yeah.
you don't give a fake name. You give like the name that you're like, even if it isn't his real name, it's the name that everybody knows him by. So like, why are you introducing yourself as James Bond? It's the same thing. Geraldine goes in and she's wearing a pendant with a sword on it. It's like, why would you do that? Like, the bad guy, like Hydra wasn't like running around Shield, everybody wearing like Hydra pendant. You know,
Right.
they weren't
Exactly.
like they were like looking across like the promenade and just being like, "Oh, hey Phil, hail Hydra," like they were a lot more secretive about it. And Sword so far is not doing a great job, because if that beekeeper was also somebody who was trying to infiltrate the like, the illusion or whatever, the force field, why would he wear a giant sword logo on his back? So it makes you wonder why all these sword logos are popping up like around everywhere. It's very interesting to try and figure out what Sword's like true intentions are here, whether they're trying to help Wanda or hinder Wanda. And I have a bit of a theory, and maybe
Okay.
it's a little out there, but I'm kind of wondering if, you know, so we know that the time frame of WandaVision is like immediately after Endgame, right?
Mhm.
So we all know that Vision right now in continuity is deceased because he wasn't brought back with everybody else, in Endgame after they used the Infinity Stones to like bring everybody back. So Vision is one of like the permadeaths that we're aware of right now. So it's it's very so we know the time frame, and the question I have in my head is, what if Wanda is actually pregnant, like in the
Yes.
real world? So
Ooh.
so if Wanda is actually pregnant and somehow the child is like Vision's child, right? She's built this world where she has her like husband essentially back, the father of her children is back, and maybe Sword is trying in a way to like, maybe they're trying to take the babies,
That
you know,
crossed my mind too.
because Sword's whole thing, I believe in the comics, was like basically to watch and like monitor superhumans. So this could be an extension on the Sokovia Accords, where, because we haven't had a superhero offspring yet
Mhm.
in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, So if Wanda actually is pregnant with twins, then maybe Sword was trying to like monitor her or keep her under like surveillance, or maybe even try and take the children away from her, which could result in everything we're seeing now, with her like building this like perfect world inside of the town of Westview and trying to keep everybody out. So maybe she has seen the Sword logo before, because they've tried to like, take
Take
her
her
children
kids.
away from her. And that's why she's building this world, and why in this like fantasy world that she's creating, she is the perfect husband, the perfect life. She's going to have her children, and as the episodes progress, I'm sure that like the twins are going to be like the perfect kids, and like, the illusion's going to keep up because it's the life that she wanted for herself. But she's kind of like built this world because the outside world is trying to take everything away from her, because she's already lost Vision, right? And now Sword's showing up and they're saying like, listen, these are the first superhuman babies that will ever exist. We need to like monitor them and keep tabs on them, and even maybe experiment on them. She's immediately going to go into like mother rage and protect her kids, and do anything that she can to keep them from taking her babies. So that's kind of what I'm wondering, if that's Sword's like overarching like position in WandaVision right now. If they're kind of an extended branch on this idea of monitoring the superhumans and keeping tabs on them, like what was originally brought up in Civil War. And if Wanda, because Wanda was on the opposite side, she was on Team Cap, so that just kind of like furthers, the narrative that she would not want to be like working with Sword in any capacity or have any involvement with them, especially if it means like endangering the welfare of her kids.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think
especially,
that's very possible.
yeah, and like I was just gonna say and further on that, especially since her and Quicksilver was experimented on as kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the last thing she would want to happen is her kids end up like they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I never even made that conclusion. So it's just more like fuel on the fire of, why would Wanda do all this? Like, well, she's got a lot of trauma in her life, to say the least, So the idea, and that makes me wonder, since Westview is a real town, if the inhabitants aren't the actual inhabitants themselves of Westview,
Mm,
it's,
could be.
it begs the question then, like, why are they protecting this idea, or like, how do they even know that it's an illusion? There's a lot of questions about the people in the town, for sure, whether they're real or not. And that's kind of like one of the big mysteries for me right now is what role do the actual like townspeople play? Are they just kind of like Wanda's playthings to try and like keep up the illusion? And then like, why is Vision different?
Yeah. But going back to the thing, like, if you're Wanda and you lost your husband, and you've got two newborn kids or are pregnant at the time this all happens, a lot of people will sink into depression and stuff
Yeah.
from traumatic events. Well, when you can control reality, you're gonna sink into your own little world,
Oh
which
yeah.
is what's happening. So she probably is thinking, I'm gonna raise these two kids. I want them to know their dad. I'm just gonna warp this reality. We're gonna live in our own little world, together. We're
Yeah.
gonna block out the traumatic events. We're just gonna be a happy little family that they never got.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
which actually makes me wonder now if the children are actually like, if they were actually born like within this episode, like within like real time, because like in the illusion she had the twins, but now I'm wondering if those babies are actually like born right now, or if she's still like in the pregnancy and like everything that's happening around her is just like the illusion. Like there's so much to try and figure out what exactly is going on within that like force field. Like, are all these people really walking around living their lives in the form of like, early television, or is everybody just like standing still in a zombie state, and this is just kind of like a hive mind collective like illusion type thing? I really want to know what's actually going on inside of that force field, like it within the terms of like our reality, and not like this reality that Wanda's created. That's I want to see that I want to see that force field tear down so bad and figure out what's actually going on. And I think WandaVision's doing a great job of like making you want to come back and watch, because they're not giving away a lot with each episode. They're giving you, I think, just enough to bring you back and make you want to watch the next episode and wonder like, okay, well, what's going to get revealed next and what's going to happen next. So the first two episodes dropping on the same day, they revealed very little, but enough to let you know that like there's something off going on. And then I feel like this episode really kind of helped frame the world for you a little bit better by showing you, okay, Sword's encamped outside of this town that's obviously being controlled by Wanda, but now the question is why? So I'm hoping the next week's episode, I don't need a full explanation for next week's episode, but I kind of like to see a little bit more from like Sword's perspective and get maybe like a little bit, like I'd love to see a scene of like Geraldine being like debriefed about like what she saw like going on inside there, so like just her recapping of what's happening could be very interesting. Like it doesn't have to give away Shield's intentions or anything. Like they don't have to ask about the kids or anything like that. But it would be very interesting to see like her perspective from what all she saw inside of Westview.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna throw out a question to you guys. With Wanda pretty much getting pregnant at the end of one episode, giving birth in the next, are we going to see the kids age quickly through this show? Are we going to see them be toddlers this next episode and then in middle school the next? Or are they going to be, now that they're born, they're just going to be babies? What do you guys think?
I think they're gonna progress. I think they're gonna grow a lot because I can see a lot of because you know what sitcom isn't complete with like child actors.
Yeah.
You know. So I can definitely see like especially if they start progressing into the 80s and 90s of like TV sitcom eras, if they start getting
a Full House.
We can get a Full House.
Yeah, if they start getting into like Full House or like Family Matter, like that kind of like the sitcoms that are really centered around like the whole family, you know, because like early sitcom, like early things that they've kind of touched on, like you know, like Bewitched or
I Love Lucy.
I Dream of Jeannie and stuff like that. A lot of that just focused on kind of the dynamic between the husband and wife characters. And now that there are babies involved, I can see them moving more into like dealing with the problems that the kids have and, you know, being new parents and all of that stuff. So I could definitely see them progressing to the point where these kids are like at least in like the elementary school range, you know. Yeah, I'm expecting 100% one of these kids to show up with a backwards baseball cap, like a flannel shirt that's unbuttoned, and like a skateboard. Like I can almost
guarantee a shirt or something.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's. I feel like it's probably definitely gonna happen. They're not gonna keep them just as kids or just as babies. You know.
I honestly think this is their origin story. I think by the time this show ends, they're going to be, you know, young adults ready to, you know, do whatever. I think this is their origin story. I really do.
Now that's interesting. That would be crazy for this series to end and we have like a fully grown Tommy and Billy like with their powers and introduce them into the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's possible because as we've said before, Wanda's powers are they're mind altering, but now we're seeing that there's a reality altering aspect to them as well because if she is responsible for the town of Westview being in the state that it's in, then who's to say she can't like advance the age of her two children to the point where they're adults, and to the point made earlier that she wants her kids to know their father and have that experience with their dad, you know, because Vision, we don't know if Vision will ever come back. We don't know if maybe Vision was rebuilt at some point, or you know, maybe our Vision is just a shoddy replication out of Wanda's mind. It's, you know, we don't know.
Yeah,
it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out.
I'm going out on a limb, but I'm saying that Vision's not coming back. And the reason I think that is because we've seen him in the show with the Mind Stone on his forehead.
Yeah.
Which we know that can't happen. I don't even think Wanda could recreate an Infinity Stone.
Right.
So I don't think Vision's coming back. Now, if we see him later in the show without the stone or something, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't think Vision's coming back, unfortunately.
Yeah, the show definitely seems like his last like hurrah, like a proper send out for Vision, which is going to be sad, but you know, not every character can have longevity. Like we've already said goodbye to so many Marvel like MCU characters already, so Vision. I think it's nice that Vision has a proper goodbye, you know, because I feel like Tony and Cap had a really nice goodbye, and Vision, unfortunately, like for a second there, it was like nice, the self-sacrifice, but then Thanos just kind of reverting time and like viciously murdering him was not a really good send-off for the character at all. You know, it was dramatic, but I don't know, it feels like, you know, Vision's been around in one way or another since the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, because he originally started off as Jarvis,
Yep.
and then evolved into Vision. So it's like how do you just, you know, literally rip the head off of that character and then just leave him there? And it's like, wow, like this is it, like this is what we get for him. So I'm okay with this being his last hurrah, because I'm glad that he gets a better exit than just having his brain plucked out by Grimace.
Yeah, and that would make a wonderful either end of an episode or the show in general of for, you know, I think eventually someone's going to get to Wanda, or Wanda's going to come to terms with it and be like, I'm living a lie, you
Yeah.
know. And I think she is going to have to end this illusion either by, you know, coming to terms with letting Vision go, or killing this version of Vision and
Ugh.
ending the reality. I
Yeah.
think that's what this is going to come down to. She's watched Vision die twice now, and
Yeah.
now she's going to have to, you know, just lay him to rest and be like, I've got to raise these kids right, you know, and get back to reality. I think that's how, at least the reality portions of the show, I think will end. Whether that's the end of the show or not, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I really do think that's what's going to happen.
Yep. Agreed.
But yeah. All right. Was there anything else we missed that we need to talk about? Oh, there was that funny scene with the stork.
Oh.
Oh
The
yeah.
stork being in the house and
Yeah.
Wanda trying to, you know, keep Geraldine's attention off of him.
Yeah. Yeah. More just, you know, this show does a great job of the comedic bits, you know, because it's very tongue in cheek, because they're like pulling all of these things from, you know, old school TV, you know, making goofy noises, throwing things to distract people, you know, all of the like little things, and the stork kind of just dancing around in the background doing his own thing was very funny. I thought it was funny. Geraldine's pants had like fish on them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what attracted the stork over to her. And he starts tugging at her like at the bottom of her pants. And I can't remember. She does something. She makes like a loud noise or something, or claps her hands, and then the bird just like freaks out and takes off. Like, and Wanda the whole time is like wide eyed and about ready to like lose her crap, because she's like, oh no, everything's gonna get revealed. And then like 5 minutes later, she goes into labor, and suddenly everything in the house is like spinning, the vacuum's like moving, and Geraldine's just like, I'm sure there's an explanation for this, but there's a baby coming, so we gotta deliver this baby. You know that. And there was Julia. You want to talk about the kind of the fan theory that's going on right now about Geraldine?
Yeah.
I think it's probably worth mentioning. You know.
Yeah. So there's this fan theory that Geraldine is actually Monica Rambeau that we see as a young girl in Captain Marvel. So the timelines fit, because you know, we see it in, like, we see Captain Marvel in 90s. So fast forward to we're probably in like modern day, wouldn't you say, like 2021? Like,
Well, let's see. Endgame took place what, 2018, 2019?
yeah.
Yeah,
And it's taking place right after, so yeah, we're pretty close to modern.
Like 2020. So
yeah, the timeline's hard to follow sometimes, because I think there are some like discrepancies within the timeline in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's based after Endgame, so I'd say, you know, modern era is probably a safe assumption.
yeah, but like, we don't really have any solid evidence that it's her. Unless if Geraldine is a code name that she goes by within Wanda's vision. Wanda's head. Thank you. And her real name is Monica. And we may get more answers in episode 4. You know, if we see Geraldine get to be getting debriefed, she could be called Monica, and that would just put the nail in the coffin, kind of like, yep, that's her.
Yeah, I think the fan base has maybe problems, not the right word, but they fixate on characters that seem to have an importance. and very rarely do they just want to like admit that it's a new character that's created for the purpose of a show. Like, and especially with Marvel, like everything has to like be a callback to something, you know, because every time we watch, we watched this episode before the podcast and also yesterday, and one of our friends that we were watching with was just constantly like, "Oh, what does that mean?" Like they're like the numbers on their house was like, I think 2800 or something. That was like their house number, and he's like, "What does 2800 mean?" And it's like, so there's always got to be an Easter egg or a callback or something. So I think when she popped up, the fan base is just immediately like, "Oh, it's got to be her because because that's the way Marvel works." And it's like, yeah, it'd be fine if it was. Like, I don't have a problem with her being the same character from Captain Marvel, but it's just like there's no real like significance
It
to
doesn't add
it
anything.
being her. Yeah, no, because what would she even have in common with Wanda or Vision? Because her connection is Captain Marvel, and other than the idea that this little girl grew up in her mom's and her aunt's like footsteps and became a sword agent. Like, other than that, like, yeah, that's nice and it's sweet and everything, but it doesn't really contribute anything more to the story. Like, I don't care whether it's her or not, because there's no connection to Wanda. It doesn't further the story in any way other than just being a connected universe that we already knew about. It's like no big deal. Like, every time there's a callback to another movie or another hero or another whatever, it's cool, but we already know it's a connected universe. It's like we like it's been that from the get-go. So no one should really be shocked or surprised or feel any sense of like, "Oh, look at the super sleuthing I did." It's like, no, it's like, of course we're gonna see crossover stuff, and even if it's minor stuff like that, like, whatever. It's if you want to pat yourself on the back because you think you're a detective, then fine, whatever. But it doesn't add anything. Not for me, anyway.
Alrighty, so let's talk about another fan theory.
Oh boy.
Okay, so the ads. Have you guys noticed it's been the same man and woman in every ad?
I didn't notice that, but
No.
Okay, there's a theory that the reoccurring presence of the same man and woman in Wanda's memories could be her parents.
Ooh, that's interesting.
But does Wanda know her parents?
I think so.
Because of how her and her brother got taken away at such a young age.
Because their parents were killed by like a bombing that happened in Sokovia, because that's where their tie to Tony is.
Okay.
Because the bomb that like landed in their house that was a dud had Stark Industries written on the side of it. And like Wanda, I don't remember who Wanda tells this to, but maybe it's Ultron, but she basically says that like they sat there for like days staring at this missile that had Stark Industries written on the side of it, just waiting for it to explode and kill them, and it never did. But they were responsible for destroying their hometown and killing who knows how many people, and I assume their parents were probably a part of those casualties.
Okay.
Because I think they went to, or like they volunteered to be experimented on by Strucker. I don't think that they were taken against their will. I think they were more or less like on board for it because they want revenge. At the time they wanted revenge against Tony. So the only way to do that is to get superpowers. So
yeah.
But yeah, the idea of that being their parents, I mean, it just furthers the narrative of like Wanda trying to create this perfect world for herself to try and erase a lot of the trauma that she's experienced in her entire life.
Yeah.
Which I will say this about the commercials too. Well, the one in this episode in particular, it was for Hydra soap, which I think is funny because when you think about it, when you use soap, you use it to clean yourself, brainwashing.
Yeah, and then the slogan was "Escape to a world all your own."
Yeah.
And the lady said something about like you read my mind or something, like when
Yeah.
the narrator was
Yeah.
asking her, "Do you want?"
Yeah, it was a
to
lot of
know
like
man?"
brainwashing type things, and we know Hydra loves their brainwashing.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
poor Bucky.
And are we done with this? Like, I don't want to switch over to a new topic
No,
before.
you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that we see Billy and Tommy in the comics as well, and that they are actually some pretty cool, of what I've read, really cool teen superheroes named Wiccan and Speed. Wiccan gets Scarlet Witch's powers, and Speed obviously gets, Quicksilver's powers.
Mm.
And that they join the Young Avengers team as heroes.
Now that's definitely something that's cool because it would be really interesting to see a Young Avengers in the MCU because
Yeah.
there's a lot of like younger superheroes that we have and that are slated to come out even, with Miss Marvel, being announced. And
Kate Bishop.
yeah, and we have, I mean, I think Peter Parker could even fall into that category. I would love to see the Black Panther's sister.
Ooh, and
Ooh.
Ant-Man's daughter.
Yeah, Ant-Man's daughter. I mean, Tony's daughter.
Yes.
You have all of these kids, and Tony's daughter is still like very young, obviously, but with the shenanigans of the Marvel universe and the multiverse potentially opening up, who knows where we'll be with these characters in the next few years. So I think it would be really, really cool to see like a Young Avengers. And I think because aren't they making an Ironheart show for
Yes.
Disney Plus? So, well, there you go. Then I don't know if that Ironheart show will focus around Tony's kid, like in the future, or if it's going to be somebody else entirely. But I mean, there's your Iron Man, for the
Yeah.
group. So there's all of these young characters that are coming up, and if Tommy and Billy do grow up in this show and are at a point at the end where they can, be a part of the universe, I think it would be great to see, more of the Young Avengers because it's, new lifeblood into this series is not a bad thing by any means. We've had 10 years worth of the old guard, and not to say that I don't love the old guard, but, to keep things fresh and to keep things new, it might not be a bad idea to start introducing younger characters or sidekicks or any of that stuff that can kind of lead you into the future. Kind of a bit of a tangent, but I think that's something that DC movies suffer from a lot. You don't get a whole lot of like the future that's to come. A lot of their stories are like self-contained, but when you look at the larger universe that they're trying to create, they might be like a day late and dollar short, and they've got like actors dropping off like flies, like not wanting to do these parts anymore. So having that young blood pool that you can go to and be like they're the future of this franchise, I think that's something that's very important, especially if you want to keep something like an extended universe going for like years to come with like no end in sight. And I don't think Marvel really has an end in sight for the MCU, because why should they? It's it's a cash cow.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
which in doing some more digging, we could very much see a Young Avengers because apparently, alongside Wiccan, they're also the characters of Kate Bishop, Ant Man's daughter, and America Chavez, which has already been cast to play in the new Doctor Strange movie.
Really?
And those four are part of the Young Avengers comics.
That is
Wow.
very.
So we could possibly see, a little hoorah in them. And of
I'd
course,
be 100% down for a Young Avengers team up.
And that could very easily be like the end of this phase. Like we're in what, like phase 4 now, I think.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I believe so.
phase 4, 5. I think it's phase 4, but like that could very easily be the end of phase 4. Is like a Young Avengers movie. That would be. I think that would be great because I don't know if the entire slate for this phase has been laid out in its entirety. I know a lot of it has been revealed, but either like the end of this phase or the beginning of the next phase could see an introduction to the Young Avengers, and I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck, that might be our next Avengers film.
Oh,
Might be.
wouldn't that be
be-
good?
Yeah, very well could be.
Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything else we missed? Need to talk about, guys?
Nope.
No, I think we can probably wrap up by just kind of giving our final thoughts on the episode and how we feel about it, because I thought this was a great episode, probably the best episode that's come out yet. Each episode has gotten better as they come out, and the more that they reveal, they kind of pull the mystery back more and more, the more interested I am to see what's happening next. So as far as I'm concerned, WandaVision is getting an A+ across the board, like every week. I love the goofiness of the sitcom. I love how quickly it can change and become like very serious, and kind of like the conspiracy theories that are like coming out right now about like what's actually happening in the world. So I think the more that we get, the better. I can't wait to see how next week's episode turns out, because it definitely seems like there's a massive tone shift in Wanda, especially. So next week's episode could be very, very interesting.
I agree. I think this has been the best episode thus far. Like you said, it just keeps laying on the mystery, and I'm digging it. They've got me hook, line, and sinker. I want to see where this goes. And the only complaint I have is that we're just getting one episode a week. I'd like to just sit down and binge this thing and see where it goes, But
Right.
that's my only complaint I've had thus far. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Julia?
and I'm not going to say anything you guys haven't said already. It's very good. I am excited to see how it unfolds. At the very beginning, I was kind of scared to see like where it was going to go and kind of what they were going to do with it, and I shouldn't have been scared because it's Marvel and they always blow my expectations out of the water. So it's going to be exciting to see how this show leads into the grand scheme of things.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for joining us, and catch you all later. And like, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts and interact with you guys on what you guys have your thoughts about the show. So do that down below, and we'll catch you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.